Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another session of our how-to series at Net at Work. Today, we're going to look at how to pay vendors and allocate expenses properly using your corporate credit cards. That's probably the longest title we've done in this series, but it's very specific and very useful for a lot of you that are still working from home, that have challenges with just paying the vendors. So you've said, okay, well, I'm going to just pay them with a credit card. There's a right way and a wrong way to do that, and we're going to kind of go through that today. Or I guess there's a right way and a way that causes you a lot more work at the end of the day and doesn't give you as much value. I guess I'll put it that way. So with that being said, let's kind of hop into our normal spiel here. My name is Sean Fleming. I'm a Senior Solution Engineer here with Net at Work. And I've got with me Susie Weiland, who is a Senior Consultant here at Net at Work as well. So today, it may not even be 45 minutes. We're probably going to be closer between 30 and 45 minutes, I think, as far as the presentation, depending on the number of questions. The phone lines will be muted. If you've got questions, feel free to interact with us using the question box. I'll also monitor the chat. So feel free to interact with us. It makes it a little bit more interesting for us, and you learn a little bit more by making sure you get your questions answered. As I always do here, I cover our Net at Work slide. Our goal here is to help you unleash the potential of your business through the transformative power of technology. That's our mantra. And so we do it in a number of different ways. Well, obviously, we're going to focus on Sage 300 and how to pay vendors with credit cards today is very specific. But if you've got challenges in any of these other areas, whether it's e-commerce or doing credit card processing, which we're going to cover tomorrow, CRM, HR, document management, and doing an AP process for tracking those AP invoices that we're going to pay today. Whether it's BI reporting or analytics, or you need just a business process review, you got broken processes, you need to associate them to Sage 300 technology or other related technology, we can help you do that as well. So as well as we're taking a lot of people to the cloud and in a hosted environment these days, seems to be a very popular choice for our customers. So with that, if you've got any challenges in any of these areas with any of these vendors that you see, reach out to us. We're happy to have a conversation and see how we can help move the needle for your business and move it forward. So with that, I always start with a quick poll. I'm going to launch the poll today. It's a very simple poll question. I'll go ahead and launch that. Do you pay AP invoices with a corporate credit card? Let's see what our results are here. So far the yeses are winning, Susie. We got 56% at yes and 44% at no. And luckily nobody's using cash, so that's good. We got 60-40 now that we've got it here. And I've got, just under 70% voted. So I'm going to go ahead and 73%. So we're at 55-45 right now. So I'm going to go ahead and close that out so you can get an idea. So we're close to half and half. And let's kind of take a look at this. All right, so agenda today. We're going to look at the standard ways corporate credit card payments work. We'll look at why set up credit cards as a bank account to pay the AP invoices. And there's different benefits that Susie will go through and as to why you would do that. And then we're going to look at kind of two different options, if you will. How to set it up option one, how to set it up option two within Sage 300, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. If you've got questions, feel free to put them into the question box, so that'll queue them up so that we're ready to go for the Q&A at the end of the session. All right, so that, let's go ahead and take a live look, and I'm going to go ahead and pass this over to Susie. Susie, you should be presenter.
Okay, thanks, Sean. Make sure that I am showing my screen.
We can see it.
All right. Excellent. So thank you for attending the webinar today. And our discussion today is if you use credit cards to pay vendor invoices. And the two methods are very similar. And it also will help determine which one's best for you, how you're doing it today. because the second option is more for people who are processing credit card transactions. Maybe you make your employees hand in receipts or email receipts, or you get the information and you have to keep up on it with a daily, weekly basis, versus just dealing with it at the end of the month when you get your credit card statement. Another aspect to this is purchase orders. If you are not using the Sage 300 purchase order module, or you don't have inventory, then that can be even simpler. Obviously, if you don't have to track your credit card payments, track your vendor payments that you make by credit cards, then you can just enter your credit card statement, put it to your different GL accounts, and go on your merry way. It doesn't have to be complicated. What this was designed for is back in 2009, 2010, the IRS was talking about making people send 1099s or different kind of a form to say how much they paid vendors, and then you would have to track these payments as well, versus with a credit card you'd have to report it. That fell flat. Fortunately, we don't have to do that. But more to the point, a lot of business owners like to get the credit card points, and it also helps cash flow. Many reasons why people use corporate credit cards to pay invoices, but it's critical when you're using the Sage 300 inventory module to enter a purchase order and then enter an invoice to that specific vendor. And so that definitely would, if you're doing that, you'll need to set up one of these methods. So that said, I'm going to go through the white paper here on the left-hand side, and I need to update the screenshots, and bank transactions have changed a little bit. So we're going to provide an updated version of this to a way that you can get this, and Sean will communicate that to everybody. And so the first option is, this one is for these. This one is for people who are processing their statement basically at the end of the month, I would say. And so the first thing that we need to do is you have to set up a new account number, the chart of accounts, which I've already done. And I'm going to go ahead and go to the bank services here where our screenshot is, and set up the MasterCard Bank. And you can see that I have selected this account that I set up, and this is a corporate MasterCard clearing. And so what this does, this allows us basically to create credit card checks from the, and I did not set this up. Actually, we don't need that. Never mind. This allows us to create check payment transactions, not checks, payment transactions for the invoices that are paid by the corporate credit card. So that's why we set up the bank. And that's a little bit odd, but it makes sense in the end. And so we've set that up, and then let's see. So the processing of the credit card statement here is where we would enter the credit card statement balance as an invoice against the credit card vendor, because obviously that has to be paid. And you'll post the full balance to the default expense account, which is going to be this clearing account. We'll go ahead and do that. And I have some of these set up. I have a few invoices in here that I have set up to be paid. I'm going to do that. And then we are going to go to our accounts payable, transactions, invoice batch. And then we're going to just go ahead and set up the credit card. Force of habit, I have to label my batches. So my credit card vendor is, I think, yep. And so I have this set up as a default. And for anybody who does not aware or isn't aware, that's underneath the vendor setup. You have 4 different options of defaulting a general ledger account, distribution set, distribution code, or not having anything at all. So in this case, I can go ahead and put in my 20 statement. I may have already done this, so I'm just going to put an A in there. I will put in an amount. Never going to be even. Then we'll distribute it. And then we would go ahead and post. And this has been an option with a version, I think 2014, that you can post from the entry, but that's all done. All right, so we would just put that in there just so that we can pay it. A lot of these things are done online as well, paying your credit cards without, mailing a check. So that can also just be a bank entry, but going along with using the AP module, we're going to go ahead and follow these instructions. And then next, what we are going to do is so once we have the batch containing the credit card statement and the vendor, so we would have all of the, we would have put any missing expenses in there. And the other way that we can do, so what you would do then is put in any missing, once you have your statement in front of you, any missing charges. So in this example, I'm just going to go ahead and show you that all of my, in this case, my credit card statement, it just went ahead and paid vendor invoices. Obviously, you would have to go ahead and put in these additional invoices to the vendors so that it's consistent with all the vendors are going to be paid. And you may set up a miscellaneous credit card vendor just so that, or via the employee, which I have set up down here, a vendor ID for the employee. I set up a miscellaneous credit card vendor, just something that you can enter in that for the individual, gas stations, meals out, travel, those sorts of things. You don't necessarily have to have that set up if you don't need to track those expenses. So once all the expenses are entered in, then what we're going to do is we're going to create an AP batch. A payment batch. And we're going to select our new bank account that we set up. So this is going to be the, we'll just do MasterCard. Make sure that I pick my new bank account. And then now I'm going to have to pick my invoices that I have in there. And if I was smart and I could, then I might have already set these vendors up with this payment code. And I had set this up so that I can have this to where no check will be printed, and it gives me another tracking for that. And if there are vendors that I always pay by credit card, then I could have even set up a credit card, generate a batch based on that. So there's ways to streamline this as well. But I'm going to go ahead and pick a couple of the invoices that I have in here. Now these were actually credit card invoices. I'm sorry, these were actually invoices that were created versus via the purchase orders. So those I have to have underneath my vendor. And that's really the trick here. So let's go ahead and we'll add some more. Yes, I do want to add that entry. And we'll go ahead and add my miscellaneous credit card vendor that I set up, which is here, non-specific. So we have one of those. And we'll just put a couple more in now that it's being slow. Okay. Okay. So you get the point. What this is going to do is just all of the expenses that I had on my credit card. This doesn't equal the $20,000. I'm not going to show that reconciliation process, but this should equal the amount that you put in for your monthly credit card statement. Once I post this, you'll see that it does not want me to print any checks. Now I have paid the vendor invoices, and I have increased that liability account for my credit card clearing. So now when I pay my credit card invoice, then that's going to be cleared out. And I have tracked all my payments to my vendors. Sean, do we have any questions at this time for this methodology?
Nothing in the queue at this point. I'll keep watching though.
Okay. So that first method is definitely to the point of I'm pretty much processing my credit card receipts, invoices, things like that when I get the statement. I'm not doing it real time. And this was, let me get down to the second method. And then this is just showing paying the, and then you just pay the credit card. This is being a little slow. Where it's scrolling down here. There we go. And in the white paper, we have how the general ledger will work and the general ledger accounts will work. And you can see that yourself when you look at the general ledger postings so that you can make sure that those clear out properly. So option 2, what this does is a similar concept in that we have our credit card bank set up and we have actually another clearing account. This has the second account, the first account's clearing account, and that's going to be the corporate MasterCard. The second would be the credit card payable. And what this does is we're still adding the bank account here, but this basically creates that credit card payable account as well. So when we go down here, this is where there's a difference. There used to be, in prior versions, bank transaction types. That went away. I don't remember what version. So instead of that, when this is updated, what you'll see is a distribution code. And where that is here underneath your bank setup. This would be a distribution code. And the only thing that this is doing is setting up your credit card payment to this general ledger credit card account. And what this is designed to do is, because you're kind of processing your transactions as you go, and you want to use the bank reconciliation method, the bank reconciliation module, to reconcile the credit card entries that you've made because you've been entering them during the month. Then with your statement in front of you, you can make sure that all the credit cards are taken care of. What this will do is then clear out that credit card payment in the bank reconciliation. And it doesn't have to do with actually paying the credit card, because you still have to do that, of course. But that's that extra step here. And again, it really speaks to how you manage your credit card expenses during the month and how you reconcile it. And we'll get that updated. So we have our credit card vendor defined, which we did. And then in this case, we're processing credit card transactions like processing regular invoices. But what we're going to do is we're going to actually pay them as they come in. So my theory is that make my employees turn in the receipts like everybody does, but hopefully they do. And I'm going to go in and create a batch of invoices. And I'm just going to go ahead and I didn't want to do that. I'm just going to go ahead and pay these as I go. So when I have this is going to be my weekly credit card receipt. Our card expenses. And then I can put the vendors as they go in. So assuming this is more like a Home Depot, or even if I want to have airline set up or something like that, I can put in the invoice underneath the vendor so that I can track this, assuming that's something I wish to do. And if there's not a specific invoice number, and this could also be things that the employee used their credit card to buy even online, Amazon, Newegg, whatever they're doing. This really just gives us a way to track expenses by vendor if it's something that we need to do. There's an invoice number. If not, you can just make it up as you go along. And then we'll go ahead and put in our expense. So I should have had one in mind. Here we go. We'll just put that in as a cost of goods sold. And I did not put this up here, but we'll put in the amount. Whoops, not that much. And then once I add this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and pay it using my prepayment process here. And this is going to be and this is where I change my bank. So we're using the same bank between the two different methods. The whole concept is having a credit card bank in order to run transactions through so that I can post expenses against vendors, track payments to vendors. And then I'm going to also change this because I don't want to print a check. I'm going to change this to my payment method, and then I can go ahead and add that. And so what that's doing is, instead of the first method where I create a batch at the end of the month of payments that reflect all of my expenses on my credit card, payments to vendors, what I'm doing is I'm kind of doing it as I go along, but I'm still creating a check using my credit card bank to quote unquote pay the vendor. I'm going to save that, close, and then we'll just do one more. And this could be to my miscellaneous credit card vendor, non-specific credit card vendor. Oh, I apologize. This is something that is there. We're back up again. I had this on a computer that shouldn't have been interrupted, but something interrupted it. Okay, back to this. And we're going to go ahead and put in, this one again. Oh, this is the wrong one. Sorry about that. This is my non-specific one. There we go. Okay, we still use that invoice number. And then we could have, and then in this case, what I can do, I can even have a distribution set up to where what my employees are usually spending on their credit cards, then I can go ahead and put those things in, like the gas, meals, things like that. And so we're just going to go ahead and just pick a couple here. And then again, we'll just add this. And this is something, if you weren't aware, that you can do too if you have to, for some reason, create a check on the fly, but you want to not just do a miscellaneous payment, that you actually want to enter an invoice, but you have to print the invoice right away. You can utilize this as well. And I actually had that payment code set up because I know that I'm using this vendor for non-specific credit card charges. So I'm going to add that. I'm going to close that, and then I'm going to post this. So this is posting my invoices for the vendors. And then I have to remember that I do have to also post my payment batch as well. Okay. And this are the screenshots that show how to do the prepayment through the credit card. And then when we get the credit card statement, when the credit card statement's received, you're going to do a bank reconciliation of the credit card because we've been entering our payments and our credit card receipts from our employees, all the things that we've been doing during the month. Because I could also then, if I know that I'm paying my Staples bill via credit card, then I could have just entered that as a payment batch if the invoice was already in the system. The whole concept is I'm doing this as I go. Then I would go into my bank services, reconcile my statements, bring up my bank. A little ahead of the game here. Really, I would be doing my April one. And then I put in my statement balance. And then I can go ahead and look at my credit cards charges that I had, and then I can go ahead and tie these out that, that they've come in, and then I can see if there are any missing and go ahead and see if I can't get them from my employee or if I'd forgotten to enter one, and then go ahead and enter those, and I can finish my reconciliation. You can also utilize a reconciliation for the first method, but the, well, that was the other point. Doing it this way kind of allows me to make sure that I have all the, kind of just process it as I go. All right, seriously. Okay, see if I can type that in here.
There you go.
I know. I need it. I hit my keyboard so hard I've worn off the letters. I'm going to have to get a new one or get some white out, see if I can't paint them back on again. Okay. So once this is correct and this is in balance, then I can, once I have this done, so I'm going to do that, and then what I can do is do a bank entry, and that's where that credit distribution code we have. And so this would be the bank code MC. And then I'm going to go ahead and show that it's paid. And then we look here. So this was where I would post the missing charges, and then to complete the reconciliation, that's posting this transaction using the credit card payment bank transaction type. And you're going to post the full credit card statement balance to zero out the balance in the account for the statement period. And then this part here is where you would actually physically pay the credit card vendor. So I'm just going to go ahead and put this in. And this is where we put in our distribution code credit. And then we'll just use our previous example. And then this is assigned to my credit card payable account. And then I can add it and post it. So there's an extra transaction with this method. So It just depends on what makes sense to you and how you manage your credit cards. And then that's basically the conclusion. So are there any questions come up?
No, I think you've covered it fairly thoroughly. There's nothing in the queue. I guess, you have to make the decision which methodology you want to use and probably stick with it. If you like the more detailed approach, the second one is there if you're going to stay on top of it on a more daily basis. The other one, if you're going to just deal with it on a month-to-month basis as the statement comes in, option one is a good option. So there's two ways to look at it. I know I'll work with Susie to get this documented or document updated. So it's got the latest versions because they just made some changes. And we want to make sure that those changes are updated on this white paper. So why don't you give it back to me, Susie? Thank you very much, or I'll take it back.
Oh, go ahead and do that. Yeah.
As long as I can find it here. There we go. All right, we've taken a live look, so reminder to do the questions. While you're looking at questions, one thing I also want to mention is, we talked about, doing the credit card payment itself, and that's what we wanted to focus on today. But half the battle is creating the whole process where you are tracking the PO, tracking the workflow to get the PO, to request the PO, tracking the invoice as it comes in. And if you need more functionality to control those payables as they go out and control your cash flow and visibility to see where they're at, then talk to us. There's lots of different pieces of software out there that can help with that can streamline those processes and make sure that you don't have challenges when it comes to AP automation, tracking the invoices, the workflow of those invoices, approval of those invoices, where you were traditionally pushing a lot of paper. If you're working from home, it's hard to push paper, so there's a lot of options on how to do that electronically. So there's one that's come in here. What option would you recommend if you upload your credit card statements monthly and it has many line items, some paying vendors you'd like to track, and some that are miscellaneous expense?
Well, in that case, you would have to remove the ones that are paying vendors. And I guess it depends on where you're uploading it to. If you're uploading it into bank services, or if you are actually, creating an invoice. If you're uploading them into bank services, then you have to combine or assign a clearing account for the accounts that you pay by vendor. So in that situation, you still have to, quote unquote, pay the vendor invoice if it's actually in Sage. If it's not in Sage, then you would just have to code those expenses and decide if you want the extra work of tracking the payments by vendor. So if you don't care about it because there's no requirement to do it and you're not using purchase orders, so you're not creating invoices that have to be cleared, we have had clients that just import all of their credit cards into bank transactions because they're easier to import to, and then you would just code them to the correct expense. But if you are,
so that would be option one.
It's not. Well, it's not one of the options that's listed. So I was thinking about that when I was preparing for this, because the whole point of this white paper is I have to track my payments by vendors for whatever reason. And one of those reasons may be that I'm using the purchase order module and I am buying things from Grainger, and that invoice comes in and I've got an AP invoice sitting in my payables to Grainger, but I've already paid it with my credit card. If I'm not doing that, or if I'm not doing that, and or I don't have to track my payments by vendors, then it makes it much simpler, because all I have to do is import my credit cards. I can get them online or get it in a file that I can either export into an AP invoice that would just be the credit card vendor, or I can just use bank transactions, and that allows me to do an easier import and to get those expenses to the correct accounts. So it's not listed as an option here because the focus is, taking care of those invoices that are sitting on a vendor account that are paid by a credit card.
Okay. So if you want further clarity on that, just reach out to us. We'll walk you through anything that's very specific to your scenario and give you the best course of action at that point. So again, a reminder, good time to add questions. I'll just take a look, see if there's anything there. I don't see anything in the queue. If you've got questions, I will stay on the queue for a few more minutes after the call, make sure that we monitor any of those questions, even if you hadn't had time to type them in. I want to thank everybody for attending. I want to thank Susie for stepping in and taking us through this process or processes. So thank you very much for that, Susie. And if you've got questions, feel free to reach out to us. We will put the updated white paper on the website, and those of you that attended or even registered will get a link to that, and we'll make sure that our marketing department pushes out and publishes this as soon as we get it done. And then I want to remind everybody for an upcoming webinar tomorrow. So if you are interested on the other side of credit card processing, on the AR side, OE side, on how that works with an integrated credit card solution with Sage 300 to help with your cash flow, we're going to cover that tomorrow, and I'll be talking about that then as well. So with that, I wish everybody a good rest of the day, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Were there any late questions?